So, and if you've read the minutes from our October 10 meeting, if you have any changes to that, is there a motion? Moved by Rhett.
Seconded, I'm
Seconded
sorry.
by Lisa. Any additions, corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First item on today's agenda is to review our current investment strategy, and I don't think I have any paperwork on that.
No.
But Greg is going to pick it up from here.
Yeah, I think, thanks. I think the conversation, and again, that's why there's not a lot of materials, is more of a, a discussion item about, when we started with our investments, I don't remember where we were, 8, 9, 10 million, we're approaching 17 million. Right? And
we couldn't help ourselves. That's the way it worked out.
Terrible problem to have.
It's all good, and it's really the conversation is, do we want to bring in, are we looking at, there was conversations, I think, in the beginning about, hey, do we want to bring in someone who's, a professional who does this on a day-to-day basis. Now, again, we are still limited on what we can do based on our investment policy.
We're a public entity.
Right. And so, but, really that's the conversation, because I think, in certain meetings, there's conversation about it, and it's like, we want to make sure everyone's comfortable about what's going on. And the topic for today was, hey, do we want to consider going in that direction, going out to see if someone who would be interested in managing this for us, and then whether we loop in our brother sister entity, the IDC, maybe, but it's really more of an open discussion about, hey, how do we want to approach this? I mean, like I said, I think we are about $17 million after the recent purchase, I think last week. And then depending on what closes, right? I mean, that's really, our annual budget is about $2 million, right, expense-wise, and that hasn't really increased much. We generated $8 million last year, and 22 for fee revenue, a little bit over $5 million this year. The Andrews Terrace project closed in December, and that's, that was the catalyst for this. But again, if we look at, some of the projects now, we've been lucky with the bigger projects, right? Those have been a couple of big ones. But again, the other remaining portion of the Fairlife, if that closes, I don't, it's hard to say if that's gonna close in 24.
I expect it will.
Right, and that's about another 3.3.
About a quarter of what we're owed. So we're owed another 3/4 of the fee.
Right, so I think we got 1.25, and it was 4.
Over 4.
It was over 4, so
Yep.
let's call that another 3.5 million alone on that. So we're most likely gonna have some excess cash again, just if we think that's gonna close. Now that may be later in the year and things like that, but.
Is this in part the conversation? It's about you too, right? The expansion of, oh wow, sure, I can manage this, but now, we're really talking, a larger amount of projects and fee income, and is it an issue that you can't give it the time that maybe it needs?
Well, I think it's again, certainly there's a little complexity to it. Again, though, I don't do this on a day-to-day basis, right? Like, so we want to make sure that everyone's.
You do now, but.
Again, we're limited in what we can do, right? And so, we obviously use M&T to help us facilitate that. They're willing to trust and all that other stuff. But again, that may or not change. I think it's, from the board's perspective, it's kind of twofold. It's like, okay, do we continually take our excess and invest it, but also what's on the horizon are there other things that, the county executive or whoever wants to consider doing in the future that we'll maybe talk about? There's some additional funds we may want to talk about for workforce development after this. But again, it's finances, are all encompassing, right? They hit a lot of different areas, and now that we're in the position to do what the things that we have in place, what do we want to do with that? Okay, just investing into T-bills, okay, that's great. Like, and that probably gives us our best earning power. But are there other things that we want to consider, and do we want to bring in other people to again, maybe help facilitate some of those transactions.
What are some of the things you're thinking of? What are the alternatives?
Well, I just wanna,
Excuse me, just a second.
yeah, but there's more to what we can do, and in my, as a board member, concern is with the number, is the interest. So inside of my house, my auditor has a total investment audit to reconcile the money in, the money out, the movement. As a board member, we don't see that. And if we're taking on that we are the custodian, I keep saying custodian, we are the almighty responsible, and at 17 million, there's a lot of hands in this pot. There's just not 5 people. Okay, Wilmington Trust, T-bills, there's more in, and fraud happens every day. Banks mess up every day. A third party to help us now for peace of mind, for what are we looking at? Maybe 10 basis points? I don't see it being a lot of money for the amount of money. So before we talk about options, I think when you bring in a third party, even though, and you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but because if there are bigger entities that are bonded at a different level of $1 trillion or $3 trillion, I think that it loosens up what we can do. It doesn't restrict us in a small environment. I think when you engage with bigger players that are doing this every day and overseeing every day and reconciling a report, because what we get as a finance committee is de minimis. It's de minimis. We just look at numbers, we shake our head, we don't see the movement. And now it's time. I firmly believe 17 million is a huge number as a board member to see what's clicking here. And like I said, and Greg, you weren't here at the last time we met, it's nobody in this room I'm worried about. It's outside of this room. And 17 million has a lot of zeros behind it. And just one click of a zero, 17,000, 1,700, 170,000. Professionally, there's people out there that will catch it. I'm not qualified to catch something like that. I don't know what I'm looking for in my report that I get. And now that you have interest coming in and rolling over, that's when it gets, that's the pickings for the, we're seeing the hackers and the computer savvy people. That's the low hanging fruit. Now, I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. That's all I'm suggesting. But have we even looked into a bigger entity that does investments on larger scales that take on and have bonding power for us to say, we just bought an insurance policy for what we're overseeing? That's all I think that we got to look at.
Well, certainly our audit team, and they're always looking for fraud and opportunity for fraud.
Not at 17 million.
I'm not saying that you wouldn't be aware of that, because you would be aware, but, I had asked Greg a question. What have you thought about, just before we open it up to, here's a dialogue from everyone?
Yeah, I mean,
what thought have you given it?
Well, again, I think we're at the point that it'd be better to bring in somebody, right, for a lot of different perspectives.
Do you have an idea of what the somebodies would be?
Well, I don't know who, right? I will tell you, just because we have a part of our group that does this, they've been around for a long time. Again, I just wanted to get an idea of fees. I say, guys, if this goes out to bid, give me an idea of what we're talking about here. They're like a subsidiary of the Bonadio Group, full disclosure. But then they were about, I think that they were, now 10 basis points would be a lot, right? You're talking 170 grand.
Yeah.
Right? They were a lot less. They were 40 to 50,000, 0.39 basis points, right? Just because I don't think there's a lot of the complexity there. So let's call it that we're looking 40 to 70,000, depending, I mean, maybe that's the general range of what we would have to pay somebody. Like, I just looked at it from easy, hey, guys, give me an idea. Now, if we go out to the market, right, people in here, we're probably gonna get a bunch of different, a little bit of disparity, right, in terms of fees and what people are charging. But they charge basically, like Troy said, basis points based on the portfolio size.
All performances.
So we
right,
wanna
part of it,
track our growth,
Yeah,
Sure.
now, another one of Troy's points about the audit, right? Like there's a part of the audit that always would get into investments, right? They would comment on it. Now, we haven't had any. So this is the first year we are gonna go through. Part of our audit is going to be on our
Right.
investments,
right?
right? Because we haven't had it, so we haven't seen it, right? But they will provide a separate report and opinion on our audits of our investments. So that's kind of where we stand in terms of that. Again, I think for a lot of different reasons, especially being, hey, the money's big, it's all this other stuff. I mean, maybe there's something out there that it's, someone can, take on and bring some level of, I don't want to say like just more comfort to the boat, right? Really more comfort, like, hey, like it's, Troy brought it up, and like I said, this is not something that, we as the Bonadeo group are like, hey, we want to do this. And that's not it at all. We're probably the other side of it. That hey, let's bring in, especially if the board is agreeable to it, someone to do those different things. Now, maybe they're not going to do anything different, right? Who knows? But if it gives the board members and the people that you serve more comfort, we're all for it. Like, I'm all for it. So I don't want you to feel like, hey, we want to keep this and do this. I think it's more for the board and what you guys feel is, hey, I would feel a lot more comfortable and at peace and ease of mind and what your roles are if someone who does this on a day-to-day basis, this is not, $100,000. It's significant dollars. And I don't, unless we get some directive, and I'm sure in the future someone's gonna say, hey, let's put a couple $1 million here and do certain things, but the $17 million could be $20 million in 6 months. I mean, and if we continue to garner some of these larger projects that are coming to the area, this could be something that, this isn't like this is going to go away in 5 years, right? Like this is an opportunity to build on, this portfolio, to leave to, do other things. And hey, this could be, we get a couple more bigger projects. This could be, 25 million in 5 years. And so I just think it's something that as a board, as a finance committee, that is worthy of a discussion and consideration.
What might go into an RFP, or does it even have to be an RFP? Could it be a request for qualifications? And that's a Rachel question.
Yeah, I think it would have to be an RFP given the amount of money, and that there would likely be a number of vendors, just like your audit and legal and that. So I do think we would be doing an RFP.
And charging, again, right, a certain over 20,000, is it 20,000, right?
Yes.
Professional. Now, again, does this fall under that? I mean, this is charging again, I'm just, a percent based on the portfolio. Does that fall into that professional?
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind, like for legal, you only pay legal in the event there's litigation directly. I'm paid based on a percentage of the project cost, so I would consider it similar to that. Like,
okay,
you're hiring a professional service, and you know that it's going to be a percentage. You know the ballpark at the percentage where you're going to end up in fees. So, yeah. As for what goes into the RFP. We would have to work with Bonadeo to figure, no.
We'd have to do investigation on.
No, because if the
investments, right?
Right.
Because Bonadeo might be a bidder.
Might be a bidder.
Yeah.
So, but with what we have, I mean, I don't know if other clients of Harris Beach have investment advisors for their IDAs, but we'll find an RFP we can use.
We can also connect with, Ann brought up a good point, which is who is the county working with on there, and I don't know, does the county, invest? Does Bob Franklin, our chief financial officer, work with outside third parties on some investments, and is this something that we could connect with our counterparts?
It might be a good idea, but I don't know to, like, remember they're in the state system with the pensions and everything, so that's a whole
It's a
different. But it's worth asking Bob Franklin, for
So
sure.
are we, Troy, I heard you say 10 basis points with your auditor. My question is, are we looking for somebody to audit what we're doing, or are we looking for an investment advisor? Or are we looking for both?
In my situation, I have 40 million in investments, but it's not as regulated. It's regulated under ERISA. So I just can't let a member play the S&P 500 all day long or get into something. There's a little bit of, just like we have here,
Right.
restriction. So I think the first thing we need to do is discover that restriction. But between my auditor, my lawyer, my investment consultant, and the entity that is handling the investments, it's about 18 basis points. The custodian inside of there is about 3 basis points, to Greg's point, but then there's 11 basis points, 18 basis points, depending on the level of risk.
Right.
Okay, so the administrator takes on more risk, there's more work, there's more admin fee. I think when you RFP, and we already know the restrictions of T-bills and our umbrella, what we can do, we're already restricted. So I think in the RFP, once that's brought to the attention, it's peace of mind for who we're looking, I'm restricted in what I can do. These are the rules I gotta play in.
Right.
It's not like a normal investment that you're talking to on a 401k or something.
Yeah, like our portfolio. So we would be looking at an investment advisor, right? And then it would become a part of the audit, and I would leave that, how that plays out, I don't know.
And I think the fees in general would be less, like Troy was saying. I think when there's less things to do, right, there's less complexity. So maybe typicals are 10 basis points and whatever it is, right? And again, I think what we'll see is generally less than a typical investment advisor, because we got 3 things that we can kind of do. And how complex is that? I mean, so, right? So I think that's what I would anticipate.
So we already have a relationship with M&T, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So that opens up to Morgan Stanley, right? Morgan Stanley, M&T, and that would open up into, for one, Greystone Consulting is a Morgan Stanley entity. Carpus Group, very conservative investment firm. These are local people that I can't see them charging a whole hand over fist. But at the end of the day, they take on, if something happens, they take it on. It's not a board member. They assume that liability by their signature page, right? And we get another set of eyes. It's a watchdog, and I'm a firm believer that the more players, the more eyes, the better and smoother things will run. I don't know. I know we talked about the T-bills. I didn't know of another option.
CDs, yeah.
Well, so perfect example. I just got a call last week. Troy, you want a 3-month CD right now at 5.2%. You got some money over here that just rolled. That's the entity looking for us, taking care of doing, because my fear would be somebody come on our investments and say, in this environment, you only made 0.07%. Holy, we should have been making 5%. Now, does that the board that didn't do their diligence? Like I'm saying, we're a board here that doesn't have this experience on an investment like this. We're not business owners. We're overseers to grow. I'm not qualified at a $17 million investment, take this ride and make a decision that I'm comfortable with. I wasn't comfortable at 10. Now we're going to be at 20, and this has been a year-long conversation. This is accelerating pretty quick, and that's when things start to get convoluted and a little strewed, especially when I'm not seeing a full report. I'm not seeing the register, I'm not seeing the profit, I'm not seeing the flow. And why wouldn't you want the flow, another set of eyes, another set of ears, another set of mouths to converse about it? One of us in our profession might catch something that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Would
And
it?
I think that's the real push behind this, is that we're not, like you said, we're not concerned about the way we're managing it now, but it is taking on a life of its own.
It is.
And we really could benefit from an advisor to take this over and maximize the options available to us, which we know are limited, but at least, like to your point, maximize them, whatever they are.
Right, that's why we're having this
Yeah,
discussion today.
exactly right.
Is to come to a determination about a plan forward.
I'm shocked to hear 20 million. I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm
We're not
shocked
there
to hear
yet.
that number.
We're not there yet.
Well, think about it, I mean, we started at 10, we got to 13, we just did 4.5, so like, we just got a check for $4 million in December, well, we put it right in, right? Like, we're not gonna sit on it and
Where
keep
did you
checking.
put it?
What's that?
Where'd you put it?
Bought T-bills and notes, right? So like,
Right.
Shoebox and closet.
and I have a report from M&T, if that would make anyone feel any better, right? Like, I have a holdings report that says, here's where we're at as of today, like, I get all those
Like a
different things.
snapshot.
Yeah, I mean, I get all those things, but again, you try to be, again, in terms of what we want to, report on all that stuff, we have all those different things, but I don't see why we wouldn't move in a different direction and find someone, because I think it seems like it seems like there's a need for, some additional peace of mind.
Do you think before we go out to RFP that we could bring in some folks to just have a conversation that maybe they know something? I use Mark Fisher, he doesn't just do New York, he does the whole northeast part of the country. So there might be something ticking elsewhere that he might be able to throw out there and say, this is what Pennsylvania is doing. I don't know if you guys are inside of your restrictions, if that's something to do, but Greystone's 2.3 trillion book of business. There's leverage, there's bonding, there's a number of things that they do and offer us to take some of the weight off of us, I guess, is where I'm thinking. But Carpus would be another one to bring in to just say, hey, because they're the CD gurus of the world that are absolutely banging it out of the park for the last 5 years. I don't know if that's something to consider, or if that is even, if we can get anybody to the table to have a conversation, and that would probably be with.
You mean to educate what we do with the RFP?
Just get more discussion of what are options. I mean, what are some conservative investments that fall under our regulations?
I think we would want to be, though, in a relationship, a professional contract relationship with a vendor before seeking any advice or disclosing any of our information.
I mean, again,
I got you.
So,
generally, I think the process should be, if we have to go the RFP route, we go the RFP route, they submit them, the finance committee can interview and review.
Right.
I mean, at that point in time, you may want to, have that conversation, and then
Let
you
the
select
negotiations begin.
whatever, and select
Right.
from there, I think is probably, but I don't, listen, we look back 12 months ago, we kind of stalled for a lot of different reasons. We were going down this path and we didn't get a lot of interest. We weren't going to do RFP. We were going to do RFP. If we decide to do this, I think like let's do it quickly. Not rush the process, but let's commit to it and do it and get the RFP out and get people in and commit to a timeline. So we're not here 6 months from now saying, hey, why didn't we do the? I don't really want to get into that again. I think we got to get to the point where everyone's comfortable with it and move it forward.
There's definitely a reason it's higher
yeah,
in
I
3
think
months than
been
9
trying to
months right
talk.
now. I mean, there's.
Are we limited to T-bills and CDs?
yes.
Generally, I mean, I don't have the investment policy in
So,
front of me, but
if you look at the investment policy, I want to say there's a list of 4 possible
Savings,
savings.
CDs, treasuries.
Yeah. Really limited. It's not like we can have, you know, if anyone sits on another board where you have a portfolio and you're a not-for-profit and it's being managed or whatever, we don't have that option.
So I guess my question is, with those limitations that we have, if we're talking about only T-bills and CDs, do we need to have, I'm just thinking out loud, do we need to have an investment advisor?
Well, I think yes.
Versus
I think the short answer is yes, because they're gonna make the decisions like, okay, you've got this money
On
available.
the
Do you
spot.
wanna roll it into a 6 or a 9 or a whatever? There's options, and to maximize those options and to get that advice, rather than Greg or any of the staff making that decision.
My concern is it's under one entity, M&T. And yes, those T-bills, but the CDs, right now, I use M&T Morgan Stanley as my consultant, but I don't allow over the 250,000. And we do multiple diversification to keep everybody in that, to keep the trustees at a peace of mind that we did our diligence, and if something was to go awry, we didn't put too much into under one bank, right? And that's what scared me a year ago when we had
Defaults.
that major one. Should have opened our eyes, and Greg and I had a conversation on March Madness when this was really madness in our world, right?
Again, and ours is a little bit different, right? Because we're government and we're regulated by, the state of New York and the comptroller, and there's very specific things in terms of how our accounts, whether it's checking, interest-bearing accounts, like all of our deposits are collateralized, and then, right? So like that's why we generally don't get as great of return on investments, right? Because there's an additional cost.
We're a more
right?
expensive customer.
Right, like, hey, I get a report that says, hey, you have, $1 million in your account, and Bank of M&T, who uses Bank of New York Mellon, that's who they use, right? So we get a report that says, hey, you have $1 million in your account. Here's your $1,150,000 of investments that are backing this. You follow me? So we are, again, from what they provide us, we have very little, I would say almost, very little exposure, if any, because we have
Yeah,
money
I mean,
in our
we have
account, and we have investments that say, hey,
Right.
if something happens, here's your investments.
On the
right?
downside, we're a more expensive customer. On the upside,
Right.
we get protection that a non-government entity doesn't get, which is the collateralization that Greg's mentioning.
Now I know why the comptroller spoke at the county exec's inauguration.
What? I'm
He knows what's in the bank. He's
Oh, wow.
paying attention here.
Yeah, I don't know.
What other Western New York IDA is sitting on this cash?
I suspect Erie County has a significant balance as well. I don't know what it is. And I do know the downstate IDAs carry significant balances as well. We aren't the only one these days, which I guess is good.
Downstate Elmira, Jamestown?
No. Hudson Valley, New York City, Westchester.
I'm on a not-for-profit board, chair the audit committee, member finance committee. I attend the investment committee meetings. Smith Barney is sort of their overseer of all their investments and their endowment, So, but the requirements on a not-for-profit would be different, as we've talked
Very much so.
about, than the public entity. So I don't know how far we can go with that.
Right.
Right.
I think we're
And
getting
who
to the
out there
point where we
can
need,
help us with,
put
you know?
some of that in, but not everything.
I think even thinking the 5, 10, 15, 30-year plan right now, right? We were talking money, now we're talking, the next thing that has to happen is the plan, right? We're not here to make money, we're here to build up coffers to roll back to the community, right? So let's also have a consideration of, if we invest and this is the plan, what's the plan, right? Because not only all of us are not gonna be here for the amount of time that this money's gonna be worked on. So that's another consideration,
Yeah, I mean, we could, we'll be generating interest, right? And, again, let's call it $500,000, $700,000 this year, potentially, maybe more, whatever that is, right? That's average
real.
15 million, 5%, whatever, you know, so
It's real money.
do we want to take that and set it aside and restrict it for a certain purpose?
What do you take it and invest that in? Yeah,
All of
right.
that, right?
The county executive's office is interested in engaging with COMIDA to explore shovel-ready site development. You know, there's a larger conversation across upstate New York and western New York around market readiness with pad sites, and that's a possibility. You know, other IDAs do this in other parts of the state, Genesee County most notably in our backyard. That's how Onondaga County landed Micron, was by the IDA investing in, over the course of decades, investing in an industrial site. So that's, I think, something that Adam Bello and his team wants to talk to this board about through myself. And then I have another Rachel question. So are we asking the committee to take action on like issuance of an RFP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
And-
so I don't, the purpose of this conversation is to come out of it saying, okay, staff, go ahead, issue the RFP, and then we'll reconvene with responses and interviews and how we would normally undertake that, so yes.
Okay.
And then how we spend the money is sort of a separate
Yeah.
discussion.
Separate action.
Like today, we're gonna talk about increasing the percentage that goes into the workforce development fund, so. But that's an even bigger lift, to have the IDA doing all the make ready for.
Right, which is why it's very early days. We own the
But-
land on Brew Road in Riga, that could be an opportunity. But yeah, that's a way that other IDAs have invested some of their capital is in developing sites and then encouraging industrial development and job creation by way of making these sites ready. And that's definitely something, it's an opportunity for Monroe.
Could Rachel do some investigation on that too, when she's talking to
Options or-
IDAs?
Sure,
Who they're
absolutely.
using to manage
And
the
we'll-
funds, and how are they spending those funds?
Sure,
Yeah,
absolutely.
They're similar
I
projects
wouldn't-
like that.
I wouldn't mind if the county exec looked at us like volunteer firefighters and helped the board member with their taxes a little bit. As we come and work and sacrifice our times, I think this board to have a little skin in the game, you know, firefighter gets a discount on their taxes and.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's not an option. Lord. I can't sugarcoat that at all.
That's not fraud, it's just that little
No,
pilot in
this is
So I
60
think-
your-
60
I think
Lincoln
you're-
Park.
Pure
New York
volunteer,
State,
we can
New York
give
State
you,
provides a credit.
I was thinking our yearly
for
meeting,
volunteer firefighters.
meeting in
I
like
think that's
Tahiti or
something.
something, you know?
So do we have a plan?
Yeah.
At least the Del Monte
Go
Spa.
forward?
Right.
Yes.
And I guess pretty timely is what we were
Yes.
hearing.
Yeah.
too.
Like, again, I mean, I don't know, you.
Yeah, we'll
like-
get the RFP together, we'll issue it, we'll keep communicating with the committee, and when we have responses, we will give them to committee to make the decision.
Great.
I want it in writing that I can't get my taxes.
Just hand me a slip of paper and I'll put no on it for you.
Okay.
This is for our second discussion, I just wanted to get on paper.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I was trying to figure out where you were going with that, when you were saying that the volunteer
I'm always
firemen-
looking
I
out
don't
for the
need-
community.
Where is he going? He's back.
We have extra?
You wanna-
Did everyone get one?
Okay, so the next segment of our meeting is to talk about where we spend money, and specifically, there's a proposal to increase the share that's given to the workforce development projects. So I don't think there's any other option at this point that we're looking at, other than workforce development, correct? You want to lead that
Sure,
discussion?
just with a brief point. So you'll recall that in 2022, towards the end of 22 or in the beginning of 2023, on the heels of having had another record year with the life cycle fee coming to this organization, staff requested that the board approve an additional allocation into the workforce development fund in light of that fee. And now again, with the Andrews Terrace fee revenue, we'd like to once again request an additional allocation to the Workforce Development Fund. Through the establishment of the Workforce Development Fund, 10% of all project fee revenues go into the fund, but we are requesting, just like around this time last year, that we take 20% of our fee revenues from 23 and put them into the fund. And I'm gonna let Greg talk through some of those particulars, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll walk you through this quick. I thought I'd put it on a piece of paper would be a little bit easier. We put, if you look at 22, we started this with $2.5 million investment. All right, and then we said, hey, we're gonna allocate 10% of the fee revenue into this. So if you look at what we generated from fees last year, 8.842994 times 10% gets us to $884,000, and then the board allocated another 20% of the 8.8 to get 1768598. So last year we were at 5.152 of workforce development funds that we had put into this program. Fast forward this year, you look at where our fee income is this year through 12 months, 5913, 10%. We're at 591,000 that we have committed. So that really gives us, round numbers, right, $6 million. That's where we're gonna be, that's where we're at without any board approval. We're, again, recommending right now an additional 20%, which would be another $1.182 million. So that would bring us up to 1.774 this year based on fee revenue. And then obviously the proposed funding is the accumulation of all of those different things. So if we were to decide to do that, it'd be almost $7 million into the Workforce Development Fund. And so far we have committed a little over 4.6 million against those dollars. And that's kind of where we stand as of December, probably as of today.
So it's 6.9?
6.9 would be the number if we allocated an additional 20% of this year's fee income into the program.
So the dollar amount available would be 6.9 minus 4.6.
Yep.
It's 2.3 million. Okay. So you're almost back to where you started.
Yeah.
So to add on to the workforce development, on the union side of things, we do a lot with the city, the county, individual school districts. I always mentioned when I talked to the county executive and to the mayor, when we talk about workforce development, we have those conversations in those job fairs where you get thousands of people, and we are lacking in follow-up. Like I offered, if we were to look at the unions and the 15 entities, and each one got 15 or 30,000 to pay for somebody to go at a school and sit there from 10 in the morning till 1 in the afternoon, like a Army recruiter or a Marine recruiter. They sit there, they have a face, they have their literature. A lot of our marketing tools and entities, they build these relationships up, and it would be huge if we could consider offering, because not every school district's gonna accept that as an option, but for the East High and the Monroe and Nazareth and Aquinas, all those in city, they'll jump right on this, absolutely. I think that's our focus, has been that way for 5 or 6 years. But we need that little extra bump to bring on staff to be there. Maybe once a month, maybe we rotate, maybe one trade hits a school for 1 month and then another trade hits it. That's the only way we're gonna get the message out, because the students need to feel comfortable, whether it's college, trade school, tech school. It's marketing, right? Mm-hmm. It's building relationships and having conversations. The ball's really moving pretty good right now. That Unicon last week graduated 9 students out of the, I think, 12 or 15 signed up, and that's 80%, right? this next coalition's gonna be 25 students.
Are you talking about the new apprenticeship
That,
initiative?
it's that Rochester Careers and Construction's relationship with the PLAs.
Right, so through the administration, I've been asked to enter into conversations with Unicon about perhaps requesting that COMIDA support that exact program. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's an example of something that we might seek to support through.
Not a very expensive thing to do, because we all have the mechanics to do it wherever it's in place. We just do it in these big, huge environments that, you know, a lot of the students, you know, they're sophomores to seniors, you know, a lot of them are just there because it's not in class for the day, right? You know, and you kind of get that, but there's other that want to have a little bit more intimate conversation, and it's tough when you're standing next to your peers and they want to move over to get the next table of stickers or hard hats or a coupon to get a new set of boots or something. If we can follow up and walk in and be in their face, it would help. It would definitely be a huge recruitment tool. So.
And you're saying currently there are no organizations doing that?
I try until you get the school and the principal and that thought process, and this has been every school in Monroe County gets a reward for sending somebody to college.
That's right.
And even if that student makes it 2 weeks or 2 years on a 4-year, they still get that. So why couldn't we reward a school that gets into a program, that gets into a career, and skip over that little minuscule requirement? You know, we're partnered with BOCES right now. They have a direct into our apprenticeship program. They come right out with that degree from BOCES, and they can come and direct hire into all of our programs. Does BOCE get a kickback for that? No, and that needs to be worked on, and that's the kind of how you're going to get buy-in with the principals. They don't want us there because they don't get that dollars. And that would be another part of working on how could we include everybody right now.
And that's probably an uphill battle because it's been going on for so long. The guidance counselors are leading people towards college educations when not everybody is
Looking at trades.
Yeah.
able.
And colleges are actually changing. RIT has a construction degree now. MCC, Allied Tech Building, growing and growing. It just can't stop growing. It's out there right now, but there's the conversation still needs to be real about it.
Who do you have the discussion with? Principals? Superintendents?
It'd be the superintendents inside of the Monroe County, and that would where the county would be able to step in on workforce development and say, well, wait a minute, we're also going to reward you as entity 5 that you're doing something positive for the community.
Yeah, I think these are important conversations, and certainly your communities are having these conversations. The trade unions are advocating for it. I think as we explore our relationship with Unicon, we can talk about how can COMIDA be supportive. I don't necessarily think that we can lobby school districts and that we can pay full-time staff to go work in high schools, but those are really good ideas that we want to be supportive of. And our workforce development fund has been extraordinarily effective in the last 2 years. It's hard to believe we established it in was it 21 or 22? 22, beginning of 22.
Yeah.
So we're going on 2 years. And you can see that even without the proposed additional funding, we will have invested 4.6, almost $4.7 million, round that up to almost $5 million in that time frame, which is nothing to sneeze at, you know. And there have been some enterprise scale investments, and then there have been some very small investments, and you're gonna hear from today at the full board meeting, one of those investments, Ibero, and I think the board will be very pleased with the outcomes of that particular program. So with that being said, to bring it back to Greg, and are there any questions about what we're asking here? Again, it's pretty similar, if not identical, to the request last year, coming after the life cycle fee. Now with the Andrews Terrace fee, we think we're in a good position to reroute some of these dollars into the workforce development, which is very much in line with COMIDA's mission. And then tying it back to Troy, what you were just talking about, there are some opportunities for us looking ahead into this year and next year to get really creative and roll up our sleeves and work at the grassroots level with our organized labor partners on some new solutions that are perhaps different from what you're seeing anywhere else in the state.
And I think, Anna, that having this excess money to broaden the scope of workforce development is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Because I think there's youngsters that are in need of something more than proceeding with school.
Right.
And, I think as a starting point, Troy, with the discussions, what percentage per student do the districts get for somebody going to college, whatever percentage that is? That's what they're going to push back on. It'd be nice to know that. And somehow
Is there a monetary kickback for kids going to college?
I believe so.
Oh, yeah.
I believe so.
Like
Yeah.
state funding for
Believe it
schools,
or not.
for public schools, maybe.
Like, does it come from the state?
Probably through the state education department or, Board of Regents. That's a whole other bureaucratic
But the interesting
thing that I don't think we can crack that nut
The
as
interest-
COMIDA, but.
The interesting thing about it is, maybe they're supporting the schools and encouraging ongoing education. But isn't the education that you get to be in a union or in the trades, isn't that an education as well?
That's all they're trying to, we gotta recognize an apprenticeship program registered with the Department of
And-
Labor, it's no different.
And I think that when you go into the district by district, they'll tell you what percentage of their students they know go to college. Well, how are we supporting those that aren't?
Right.
Here's our suggestion. Here's what we'd like to do. And it's a decent percentage. I mean, even the better schools are, maybe they're still maybe 10% of the people that aren't going to college.
Recruit and retention is the conversation that's all over the country right now. How do you recruit and retain? And where you're finding a lot of 17, 18-year-olds don't know their direction right now. They just know what they're being told to do, And of course, want to get paid to do nothing. But.
I've got a nephew. He's 17. He's a senior in high school. Doesn't know what he's going to do. His parents told him FLST. He wants to go into the trades, but he doesn't know what trade he wants to go into. So I was going to actually talk to you about that. So where he goes to look at them, he thought heating and AC, and now he's thinking electrical, and he just doesn't know but he knows that he's not a student to go to school. He wants to get into a trade. He just doesn't know how to do it. His parents are both educated teachers, and the school district is pushing him to go to school. So it's a perfect example. He just doesn't know how to find what he wants to do.
That's a really good point. I like, Troy, your suggestion that just like the Army and the Marines have counselors
Recruiters.
and recruiters. Sounds like your nephew could have perhaps benefited from something
Somebody
like
to
that.
just say, he can say, what do you like to do? And say, well, this might be something, and is there a way for you to go see what they actually do? And I know I did that in school. I was going to go into a totally different field because I followed somebody for the day, and I don't even know, do they do that in schools anymore? Where you can kind of see where you're going to go?
Right?
Well, in the interest of time,
Can I just ask a question? 20%, is that a fixed number? Did we think about 25% or 30%?
we took 20% just because it was just identical to what we suggested
What we've
last
done in
year.
Yeah.
It's like doubling our
Right.
existing investment. I
I
don't
feel
think
like that's as far
we're
as we want to
opposed.
go.
I would put that on
20%.
Greg, because obviously money that goes into workforce development it's not interest bearing. That money comes in the door and then goes right back out the door to worthy organizations and proposals, rather than into T-bills. So.
It does though, it does.
Oh.
Like at the time, because we're not legally restricted from it. So we do that. We do, hey,
okay.
because we kind of have a schedule of those programs. Like if we have a program that we're gonna pay in October, that doesn't mean we keep that money idle in an account and wait for it. No, we are investing it. We invested, so when it matures, we have those funds to do it.
Oh, that's
So,
great.
yeah, so we are doing that. And again, in terms of the number, it's hard to, look at things in a, like this, like without
It's not a static,
understanding what other things the county executive, the board wanna, allocate funds to. I mean, you guys could see what our investments in our balance sheet looks like. It's very, very strong. So whether it's 20%, 30%, 50% of fees, it's not gonna move the needle that much. Even if we said, we put 50% of 20's fees, that would be $3 million, which would be another $1.9 million into the fund. But again, it's hard to make that decision in a vacuum. What I'm saying is until we understand where the board and the county want to take some of our excess and do with it, so.
And it sounds like, and I'm regularly fielding questions from the county executives team about what resources do we have available in the workforce development fund. So I know, and just like we've been talking about, there are endless opportunities for us to bolster workforce development programs in serving Monroe County. Companies need skilled workers. Job candidates, particularly young adults, need access to free or low-cost training. We have a role that we can play, and the more resources we commit to that effort, the better our economic development outcomes are, and that goes right back to COMIDA's mission. Before we conclude this conversation, I was going to ask.
Yeah, we just need a motion on the 20%.
Okay.
Yep.
And we don't need a motion on the RFP?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Been moved, seconded. Any other discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Anything else for finance? Words? All right. I will ask for a motion to adjourn the finance committee. Been moved by
Second.
Lisa, seconded by Troy. All those in favor say aye.